it had to be done,
Right.
you know?
So we've been in the pandemic for 18 months and it's clear that it's not going away anytime soon. So people will be in your position, but just in a different way. What advice would you offer to individuals who are caring for a loved one who may be impacted by a terminal illness? What would you,
First thing I would, yeah, the first thing I would tell them is make sure that you protect yourself in order to protect them, because obviously, you know, they're vulnerable, and you know, there's been enough science out there. It's been out long enough to show that it's not going to hurt you. You know, I mean, of course, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I should say that there's no short-term issues with it, for sure. But the short-term issue, if you choose not to, could be completely devastating. And if there was an opportunity for a miracle to happen, you just killed that opportunity if you don't get it, you know?
Mhm.
So, and I'm, you know, I look at things, I do my homework as well, you know, and I'm not talking about on, you know, social media and things like that. I get my information from different websites, but ones like the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic, you know, UCSF, you know, places like that, where they actually are studying these things, and they're at the top of the food chain when it comes to the information that you're looking for. So the source of where you get your information is critical, you know.
Right. And you guys, given Tanya's condition, you are vested in getting the information in order to make the decisions that make the most sense for your family. So it, you know, just kind of Googling stuff wouldn't have worked for you anyway. So you guys
No.
was really collecting, hunting and gathering and getting all of the information you needed from the sources that can give you the information to make the informed decision.
Correct, and not only just from the internet. I don't want you to. I don't want to make it seem though as though all of my information comes from that. I also talk to doctors. You know, I definitely talk to doctors. I have, you know, a few friends that are doctors, and they actually helped us through this process quite a lot. And were there with us every step of the way. One of them actually also has triple negative breast cancer as well. So she was vested, you know, emotionally as well as being a doctor. So, and what's ironic about it is that she was a neurosurgeon. So it just happened to be a brain tumor, you know. But my point in saying that is you need to do your homework, and you need to be able to get the information from resources that are reasonably a resource that you can reasonably trust, as the best way I can put it, you know.
Mhm.
And you know, check and you know, it doesn't have to be one resource. You check that information against several resources. You know, you want to find out if this information is correct, and so you just don't look at one resource and say, okay, well, this is the truth, because one person says it or one doctor says it. You know, doctors also, you know, they're people. You know, they're human. They have, you know, but they also are trained to study certain things, and so you want to find that information. At least me, I try to find that information directly from those particular doctors.
Okay. And which leads me into the next question. So I know you've had to deal with quite a few healthcare providers
Mm.
from different places, different specialties. Given you guys' journey, if you could have a discussion with a healthcare professional, doesn't matter if they were a specialist in cancer or something else, what would you say to them to help alleviate patients and their families' anxiety? Because some healthcare providers, you know, their bedside manner is a little bit to be desired. Maybe they're not as clear. They use a lot of medical jargon, and that puts people off, especially in the American community. What would, if you could sit down and just have a one-on-one conversation with them, what would you say to them?
I would say to them, first and foremost, understand that you are dealing with a human being. We have had experiences through this process with some of the best doctors and nurses, caregivers, period. Because the nurses they don't get enough credit. I mean, they're doing all the work. I mean, we were shorthanded when we had to go back into the emergency room. I had to run my wife to the emergency room at least 7 times during this process. And one time they were shorthanded, and I had to step in to help the nurse just do what we needed to do to get her where she needed to be. So they need to get the credit as well. But I would let the doctors know, because we did run into one situation where the bedside manners were just completely atrocious. Understand that you're talking to a human being. This is not a robot that you're dealing with. These are not parts, that you can just pick off of a shelf that you are just going to deal with and replace. And you're going to then push them to the nurses so they can care for them. When you speak to a person, speak to them with the respect that they're due. Speak to them in a language that they understand. And if you can't do it, find someone that can for you, particularly for our community, because we tend to get the short end of the stick quite often. We were extremely lucky because, we know some people that told us what we need to ask. Everyone doesn't have that. And I don't know. I mean, we fell victim to the lack of bedside manners with one neurosurgeon that I just, I had to put him in check, and I had to let him know, and he had to apologize for it, because he just basically was just saying, well, you're not going to live from this, and you're not this is not going to happen, and blah blah blah, and man, we don't want to hear all that. We don't care. We don't care what your opinion is. What are you going to do for us?
Mm-hmm.
So he had to check himself, because I was firm, but I was as nice as I could be about it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So did have some of that experience, and I could see how it could shut someone down who is particularly not understanding the process or the information that the doctor is stating anyway, right?
Yes.
Because I'm also just on a whole nother hand, I'm also dealing with, my father has leukemia, and it's terminal. The doctors told us it's terminal at this point. So I'm dealing with his doctor as well. So at the right at this moment, and what he, the doctor would tell my father, everything that's going on. He would ask him, tell him the whole, give him all the information from a doctor's viewpoint, and then turn around and ask him, well, do you have any questions? And my father would turn to him and say, yeah, what the hell did you just say? So, how many of us are in that situation? They don't get it because they're not talking in plain English, and so if I was able to speak to some doctors and let them know some things that would be helpful, that would be one thing. To just speak to people in plain English and have them please repeat back to you what you just said, so you know that they understood it.
Mm-hmm.
That would go a long way with a lot of people.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, next question. Towards the end of Tanya's life, you mentioned that she transitioned into being a quadriplegic and she wasn't able to talk or move her limbs. So how did you communicate your care and love for your wife?
Well, I do remember one day she was in a hospital bed in her room, and it's a single bed, and I'm a pretty good sized guy, and she is not very big. She was maybe about 110 pounds, 120 or something like that at the most. But one day, about the last week and a half before she passed, she asked me, could I lay with her? And I did. And I laid down next to her, and, and all she could say is, yay. Just the little things like that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, just caring for her every day, making sure she was clean, making sure she was dressed every day. One day she asked me to put on some earrings for her, and I put them on, and she said she didn't like those. So I had to put some more on, those types of things. There was a particular type of moisturizing cream that she just loved to use. And myself and my daughter would always, every single day, make sure she got her moisturizer on her face. Just those things that meant something to her is what I tried to give her. Like I said, the dignity that I know that she lived with, I just wanted to make sure that she had all the way through. Yeah. So those are just some of the small things, but on a daily basis, it was just beyond the physical, beyond the physical nursing type of things, like making sure I moved her every 2 hours to keep the bed sores from building up and up every 2 hours. I mean, sleep deprivation for over 69 days catches up with you. How we communicated at the end during the last week, she couldn't really, she could barely whisper, because the way that this brain tumor has, really what she passed away from was meningeal cancer, which is cancer of the brain and spinal fluid. And it's similar to, I guess, what do they call it? I can't think of the name of the other meningeal cancer or meningeal illness. But anyway, the fact is that it slowed everything down. So she couldn't speak. She couldn't get enough breath to actually speak because it shuts down everything slowly. It shuts down your nervous system. So the last thing is it actually stops you from breathing. So what we were doing, what my daughter, who is she's the genius of the family. Like I tell everybody, she takes after her mother. She went and printed out the alphabets and brought it in and pointed to each one of the alphabets so we can spell out what she wanted us to know. And that's how we did it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. So your story is so, I know you miss your wife, but your story is so wonderful because the love and the care of taking care of someone who you know is going to die. You never faltered. You had your moments, your ups and downs, your days, and like you said, sleep deprivation. But you stepped up, you stepped in, you did what you needed to do so that she could have the dignity as a human being. I think that that piece there, just across any condition, is very important. And it can make all of the difference between someone dying in the worst of situations and someone dying almost in a caring environment. And before we conclude, are there any other people? You mentioned the one doctor who happens to have the same form of cancer Tanya had, and does she have a brain tumor as well?
No, actually she is in remission, but when she actually retired as a neurosurgeon from UCSF, she was the one who recommended that I take her down there. And she is, I think she was over 3 years, which is one of the markers, or the what do you call it? The points in which you want to reach to, I guess, to say that you're there's stages that you need to reach with it, and 3 years is one of the time frames, and 5 is the next. 3 years is great, but if you reach 5, yeah, the meaning that that more than likely will not come back. Well, she then went and got more scans and more things done based on Tanya's story, because she wanted to make sure that it didn't come back on her, because we were getting the treatments, we were getting the checkups the tumor marker checks every 3 months. It didn't show up, and which means it was there for a while. So yeah, I mean, she was very helpful. And another friend of mine who is a doctor recommended me to her, who also went to school at UCSF as well. She didn't work there, but she actually graduated from there. So
Yeah, that sharing of information is really important.
Absolutely.
Really
Yes.
important.
And everybody, like I said, everybody doesn't have friends that are MDs, you know what I mean? Or have access to friends that are MDs or people, but you can still ask people. And I know that, it could be daunting, but what's the alternative? That's what you got to ask yourself. Sometimes you got to step outside your comfort zone and do some things that you may not do in any other normal circumstance, but this is not a normal circumstance. So you have to do things. It's an extraordinary situation. So you have to be extraordinary as well. And I'm not saying that everybody is built that way to do that. But I think we all have the capacity to do certain things if challenged.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And but I just hope that that anyone that finds themselves in the situation that my wife was in or their loved one is in, that they would do what's necessary to keep their loved one as comfortable and as dignified as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, that was a fantastic way to end, but I have to ask this. If you want to share anything that we haven't covered, you get this time to share.
Well, I I just hope that that there are some changes or some in the fight of cancer and everything else. I just hope that there's an opportunity that there are some cures that are actually going to be made instead of just treatments. I know that there's a possibility that could be the case. I know that could happen. They just did it with COVID. So, hopefully that there's an opportunity that that'll be the case. But I did find out the other day, though, that the Cleveland Clinic has started a clinical trial for a vaccine for triple negative breast cancer, which is what Tanya died from, and which is the most deadly form of breast cancer for African American and women of color. It's the most deadly form of breast cancer. So hopefully that will be something that will take place, and so people won't have to go through what we just went through. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for being in conversation with us, Mr. Whitlow. We appreciate you, and thank you.
Well, thank you.